Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 3, Chapter 18 of Memories of Ice, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 2 of 4 of our coverage of this chapter.
Not 14, just 4.
Yeah, this monstrosity of a chapter. This thing is huge. Yes. Possibly the longest chapter we've covered yet.
I think so. This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Both Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy story ever written, and we're approaching this from a purely fanboy point of view, and there'll be no literary critique, at least not about this series.
We'll be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that haven't read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning. Today's episode contains descriptions that may be vague and strange, and maybe not suitable for children.
Warp their fragile little minds.
It might still. Yeah.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, and we really do mean that. So send any feedback or comments that you have to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
On that note, we received a comment from Chuck Jackman about Barghast coin-threaded armor. He said that's something to hold on to. I agree. It's probably worth a fortune. I think it sounds very heavy, though. Can you imagine how heavy something like that would be?
I would imagine so. That would be very heavy. That's kind of weight, what, 50, 60 pounds minimum? Just carrying all that gold coins all over you.
Yeah, don't fall off your boat wearing that stuff.
Yeah. I guess this is why they are land peoples now.
Yeah. I guess the makeup of the coin would probably have something to do with the value, because I think there was a lot of strange coins that were unrecognized in that pool of coins that they were using to make that armor.
Yeah.
So unless it's some precious metal, maybe not as valuable as you would think.
I don't think it really spelled out any gold, or it just said coins.
Would gold make good armor? Very malleable.
I don't think so. It's so soft.
Mm-hmm.
You'd look great. In the sun, you'd look great, but... I don't know.
Copper.
I don't know. I would assume not.
Copper would look super sick when it gets some verdigris on it.
Yeah.
Brass, you could polish it up very nicely.
It's so funny. I don't know why I've been in the rabbit hole of watching people make Damascus steel. I watched Damascus titanium made last night.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's unusual. You don't quench it. A guy was trying to replicate a patent he had read about that's now gone. He got it to work, but the Damascus effect doesn't happen with a quenching. You actually put it in the fire to make the colors come out of it in the titanium Damascus.
Oh, yeah, because you can't acid etch it like you can with the other stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. See, yeah. I'm a Forged in Fire aficionado, so I'm well aware of Damascus.
Okay.
You ever watch Forged in Fire?
I've watched some of it, but I just fall down the rabbit hole of YouTube of, something catches my eye. I'm like, ooh, forging, cool. I'm like, I'm always fascinated by people doing things well with their hands. Please, I'm always a bit jealous.
Dude, we went to one of my friend's kids' birthday parties the other day, and they had a Taekwondo class as the birthday activity. Okay. At the end of the class, the kids all got to break boards, and the Taekwondo people had them write what they wanted to be when they grew up on the board. The other kids are like policemen, firemen. There was some scientist type stuff. And then my son gets up there, and he says, blacksmith. And all the parents were chuckling. It was so cool, dude, because you don't hear kids talking. He's been talking about wanting to be a blacksmith for a long time. You can make a good living making knives, axes, especially with Instagram. You show your work off online and you get famous for it, and then you sell stuff online. You've never had a better opportunity of making that type of stuff than you do today.
That's
true.
So
you could absolutely have a business doing that.
That's wild. I'm fascinated with it, dude. That glass blowing. It's all that molten stuff I'm afraid I'd burn myself with.
I would be terrified of glass blowing. The blacksmithing I could handle. The glass blowing, no. Right. I don't think so. It seems way harder.
I get it.
Way more delicate.
Oh, yeah. It's all fascinating, though.
Wow, we went on a tangent there.
Yes, we did. Sorry, deep tangent. Not even related to this show. Glass blowing and forging knives. Okay. Only on the Malazan Brotherhood, peoples.
Chapter 18, Part 2. A slash of darkness opened in the canvas wall. The mild breath of Kurald Galain flowed into the command tent, dimming the lanterns. Animander Rake strode through. The midnight rent closed silently behind him. The lanterns flared back into life. Brood's wide, flat face twisted. He growled, "You are late. The Malazans are already on their way." Shrugging the black leather cape from his shoulders, Rake said, "What of it? Or am I to adjudicate yet again?" Her back to one side of the tent wall, Corlat cleared her throat, then said, "There have been revelations, Lord. The alliance itself is in question." A dry snort came from Calor, the last person present. He said, "In question? We've been lied to from the very start. A swift strike against One Arm's host before it's had a chance to recover from today's battles is imperative." Corlat watched her master study his allies in silence. After a long moment, Rake smiled and said, "Dear Caladan, if by lying you were referring to the hidden hand of the Empress, the daggers poised behind the backs of Dujek One-Arm and Whiskey Jack, well, it would seem that, should action be required, which I add I do not believe it to be the case, our position should be one of intervention, on behalf of Dujek and Whiskey Jack, that is. Unless, of course, you are no longer confident of their capabilities as commanders. Yet Crone's report to me of today's engagement was characterized by naught but grudging praise. The Malazans were professional, perfunctory, and relentless, precisely as we would have them." Calor rasped, "It's not their fighting ability that is the problem. This was to be a war of liberation." Rake muttered, "Don't be a fool. Is there wine or ale? Who will join me in a drink?" Brood grunted and said, "Aye, pour me one, Rake. But let it be known, whilst Calor has uttered foolish statements in the past, he did not do so now. Liberation, the Panyan Daman," Rake drawled, "is just another empire, and as such, its power represents a threat, which we are intending to obliterate. Liberation of the commonality may well result, but it cannot be our goal. Free an adder, and it will still bite you, given the chance." Brood said, "So we are to crush the Panyan Seer, only to have some high fist of the Malazan Empire take his place?" Rake handed the warlord a cup of wine, then said, "The Daman is an empire that sows horror and oppression among its own people. None of us here would deny that. Thus, for ethical reasons alone, there was just cause for marching upon it." Calor said, "Which is what we've been saying all along." Rake said, "I heard you the first time, Calor. Your penchant for repetition is wearisome. I have described but one excuse, one reason. Yet it appears that you have all allowed that reason to overwhelm all others, whilst to my mind it is the least importance." He sipped his wine, then continued, "However, let us stay with it for a moment. Horror and oppression, the face of the Panyan Daman. Consider, if you will, those cities and territories on Genebakis that are now under Malazan rule. Horror? No more so than mortals must daily face in their normal lives. Oppression? Every government requires laws, and from what I can tell, Malazan laws are, if anything, among the least repressive of any empire I have known. Now, the seer is removed. A high fist and Malazan-style governance replaces it. The result? Peace, reparation, law, order." He scanned the others, then slowly raised a single eyebrow. He went on, 15 years ago, Genebaris was a fetid sore on the northwest coast, and Nathalog even worse. And now, under Malazan rule, rivals to Darujistan herself. If you truly wish the best for the common citizens of Panyan, why would you not welcome the Empress?
I had overlooked that initially, how he points out the fact that under the Malazans' rule, these places that were not nice places are now almost a rival to Darujistan, which we both have envisioned as a beautiful city. That says something.
Yeah, sounds like they got things under control.
Yeah, law and order, baby.
Rake continued, "Instead, Dujek and Whiskey Jack are forced into an elaborate charade to win us as allies. They're soldiers, in case you've forgotten. Soldiers are given orders. If they don't like them, that's just too bad. If it means a false proclamation of outlawry, without letting every private in the army in on the secret and thereby eliminating the chance of it ever remaining a secret, then a good soldier grits his teeth and gets on with it. The truth is simple, to me at least. Brood, you and I, we have fought the Malazans as liberators in truth, asking no coin, no land. Our motives aren't even clear to us. Imagine how they must seem to the Empress. Inexplicable. We appear to be bound to lofty ideals, to nearly outrageous notions of self-sacrifice. We are her enemy, and I don't think she even knows why." Calor sneered, "Sing me the abyss. In her empire there will be no place for us. Not one of us." Rake said, "Does that surprise you? We cannot be controlled. The truth laid bare is we fight for our own freedom. No borders for Moon's spawn. No world-spanning peace that would make warlords and generals and mercenary companies obsolete. We fight against the imposition of order and the mailed fist that must hide behind it, because we're not the ones wielding that fist." Brood growled, "Nor would I ever wish to." Rake said, "Precisely. So why begrudge the Empress possessing the desire and its attendant responsibilities?" Corlat stared at her lord, stunned once again, thrown off balance yet one more time. She thought, the draconian blood within him. He does not think as we do. Is it that blood, or something else? She had no answer, no true understanding of the man she followed. A sudden welling of pride filled her. She thought, he is the son of darkness. A master worth swearing fealty to. Perhaps the only one. For me, for the Tistandi. Yeah, Rake is coming in here and making too much sense to deny. And I can see why Kalor is pushing to act this way, since to him, the Malazans are competition in the human realm.
Yeah, and I love Rake for this, how he just kind of comes in. I love how they're just like kind of waiting for him to get there so we can say, hey, we got to tell you what these guys have done. He's like, oh, you mean about this? Yeah, I didn't know about that. It's like, y'all didn't figure that out yourselves? Kind of like, it's like, come on, man. I love it. This makes entirely too much sense. Way to go, Rake. I love you.
Yeah, these Ascendants, they don't want to be responsible for ruling an empire of humans. And as we've seen in our world, what happens when you take out a leader and destabilize a territory with no solid replacement to take their place? Something worse is likely to rise from the ashes. The Malazan Empire is not so bad a thing compared to the alternatives that we've seen in these books.
Yeah, agreed. I'd not looked at it so much, I just kind of jokingly said it, but the fact that the Malazans seem to represent law and order a lot, when you boil it down to a statistic like Rake just did, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you think back to what we learned of Seven Cities and all of the tribal infighting that was there before the Malazans went and took it over,
yeah,
it's not great to live in that if you're always fighting for territory. It's a lot like the Barghast tribes, where they're fighting each other and stuff.
Yeah, there's never any progress in a situation like that. It's constantly, it's either a constant stalemate and nothing is ever going to happen, or you start dragging the culture down, which is usually what really happens. I think is the culture starts going backwards and going down.
If they start fighting against each other instead of working together.
Yeah.
Definitely. Caladan Brune let out a gusting sigh, then said, "Pour me another, damn you." Kalor rose from his chair and said, "I shall set aside my disgust and voice a subject only marginally related to what's been said thus far. Kapustan has been cleansed. Before us, the river. South of that, 3 cities to march on. To do so in succession as a single army will slow us considerably. Seta, in particular, is not on our path to Coral, so the army must divide in 2, meeting again south of Lest and Seta, perhaps at Marik, before striking for Coral. Now, the question, along what lines do we divide?" Rake murmured, "A reasonable subject for discussion at this pending meeting." Brood rumbled, "And none other, aye. Won't they be surprised?" Corlat thought, "They will indeed." Regret seeped through Corlat's thoughts. "And more, I have done Whiskey Jack an injustice. I hope it is not too late to make reparations. It is not well for a Tistandee to judge in haste. My vision was clouded." Clouded? No, more like a storm. Of emotions, born of need and of love. Can you forgive me, Whiskey Jack? The tent flap was drawn back and the 2 Malazan commanders entered, trailed by the standard-bearer, Artanthos. Dujak's face was dark. He growled, "Sorry we were delayed. I have just been informed that the Teniskauri are on the move, straight for us." Corlat sought to meet Whiskey Jack's eyes, but he was studying Brood as he added, "Expect another battle at dawn. A messy one." Rake drawled, "Leave that to me." The voice pulled Whiskey Jack round in surprise. He said, "Lord, forgive me. I didn't see you. I'm afraid I was somewhat preoccupied." Dujak asked, "You are offering to set your Tistandee against the Teniskauri, Lord?" Rake said, "Hardly. I mean to scare them witless, in person." Yeah, he's going to dive bomb them.
That would be pretty horrifying.
Didn't he do like a sonic boom over somebody's camp?
He kind of comes in for a landing over the camp, so everyone, it's like watching the Air Force One come in for a landing in your little camp and have him stroll up to you. It's exactly what he did.
Yeah, that was earlier in the book when he landed, right?
Yes.
I remember that. Man, it feels like a year ago. Probably was a year ago.
It does. Probably so. Getting close to it, if nothing else.
Yeah. No one spoke for a moment, then Brood began rummaging in a trunk for more cups. He said, "We have another issue to discuss, High Fist." This image of Brood rummaging around in a trunk, I don't know why I got a picture of my kids digging around in a toy box. For some reason, you know, because like, why are you needing to rummage around to get a cup out?
Dude, it's Obi-Wan. It's Obi-Wan the first time you meet him at his house.
Trying to find a lightsaber.
For that lightsaber. Yes. But he's always looking for goblets and plates in here. Uh-huh. You know, it's like, and I love that he serves everybody himself. It's like, dude, I love Brood, man. He's just so chill. He's doing his own rummaging. He's rummaging through his own stuff.
Dujek said, "So I gather." And this is in relation to Brood telling him they have stuff to discuss.
Right.
Dujek looked positively sick, while Whiskey Jack's color was high. Brood poured more wine, then gestured at the cups he had filled and said, "Help yourselves. Kalor has noted a pending problem in the disposition of our forces." Corlat thought, "Oh, the bastards are making fun of this. Enough." They're trolling them pretty good. That's really mean.
Yeah, I love it, dude. Well, what's great is there's no offense taken. This is soldiers, man. They apparently know what's what. They're okay with it.
Korlat spoke, High Fist, to the south await 3 cities. Lest and Seta should be taken simultaneously, if possible, with the rejoining of our forces at Marek, before continuing on to Coral. We would like to discuss with you how to divide the armies. Whiskey Jack's eyes found hers. She offered him a half-smile. He frowned in reply. After a moment, Dujek said, I see. He collected his cup and sat down on a camp chair, then said, well enough, and for the moment said no more. Whiskey Jack cleared his throat and spoke. The division, at least initially, seems fairly obvious. One arms hosts southwest to Seta, which will close our lines of communication with our Black Maranth, who remain in place in the Vision Mountains. The warlord and his forces straight south to Lest. Once we have taken Seta, we strike for the headwaters of the Marek River, and then follow the course south to Marek itself. Possibly you will have arrived there first, but that is not especially problematic. Brood said, agreed. Whiskey Jack continued, I said initially, alas. The others turned to him. Whiskey Jack shrugged and said, the white-faced Barghast are joining the campaign. We also have to consider the surviving elements of Kapustan's defenders. They might well desire to accompany us. Finally, there is the looming question of Silver Fox and her Talani Mass. Keller snarled, if we allow the bitch and her Talani Mass into this war, we will have lost all hope of guiding it. God, he hates her. He hates her so much.
Yeah, very. When you say it like that, it makes me think of Cartman. I hate you, Kyle. I hate you so very much. It's just like, I think that's all Keller thinks about right now, is killing Silver Fox. He sometimes says some other things that makes you think maybe that's not all he thinks about, but my word, I think this fella, that's all he thinks about day and night is killing this gal.
This dude has spent 300,000 years stewing on this curse, and he finally can do something about it. So this is an old grudge.
You will pay. Sorry, to quote one of your children,
you will pay for that. We were reminiscing about that the other day. They were cracking up. Whiskey Jack studied Calor, then said, yours is a singular obsession, Calor. It has twisted your mind, Calor said, and sentiment has twisted yours, soldier. Perhaps a day will come when you and I can test our respective resolve. Brood cut in, enough. It seems then that this meeting must be adjourned. We can reconvene when all the relevant commanders are present. The warlord turned to Rake and asked, how fares Moonspawn? Rake shrugged and said, we will rendezvous at Coral as planned. It might be worth noting that the seer has been under serious assault from the south, which he answers with Omtos Phalak sorcery. My great ravens have caught sight of his enemy, or at least some of them. A Talani Mass, a she-wolf, and a very large dog. Thus the old battle. Omtos Phalak ever retreating from Talon. There might well be other players as well. Lands to the south of Outlook have been completely shrouded in mist born of dying ice. The significance of all this is that the seer has fled Outlook and is heading by Warren to Coral. There was silence as the implications of Rake's revelation slowly settled in the minds of those present. Whiskey Jack was the first to speak. A lone Talani Mass? A bonecaster, then, to have sufficient power to single-handedly sunder a Jagut sorcery. Dujek said, having heard the summons made by Silver Fox, yes, that's likely. Rake said, this Talani Mass is a warrior, wielding a two-handed flint sword. Bonecasters carry no weapons. Clearly he has singular skill. The wolf is an A, I believe, a creature thought long extinct. The hound rivals those of Shadow. Brood rumbled, and they are driving the seer into our laps. It seems that Coral will not simply be the last city we can reach this campaigning season. We'll be facing the seer himself. Dujek muttered, damn well ensuring that the battle will be fraught with sorcery. Bloody terrific. After a moment, Brood said, we've plenty of time to formulate our tactics. This meeting is adjourned. 30 paces from the command tent, as darkness settled ever deeper on the camp, Silver Fox slowed her steps. Krupp glanced at her and said, ah, lass, you sense the storm's passing unbroken, as do I. Shall we pay a visit to formidable personages in any case? She hesitated, then shook her head and said, no, why precipitate a confrontation? I must now turn to my own destiny. If you please, Krupp, inform no one of my departure, at least not for a while. Krupp said, the gathering is come. Silver Fox said, it is. I sense the imminent convergence of the Talani Mass, and would rather it occur somewhere beyond the sight of anyone else. Krupp said, a private matter, of course. Nonetheless, Silver Fox, would you resent company? Krupp is wise enough to keep silent when silence is called for, and yet wiser still to speak when wise words are required. Wisdom, after all, is Krupp's blood brother. I love that statement from him.
Absolutely.
She smiled down at him and asked, you would witness the second gathering? Krupp said, there is no better witness to all things wondrous than Krupp of Darujistan, lass. Why the tales that could flow effortlessly from these rather oily lips, should you ever but prod with curiosity? She said, forgive me if I refrain from doing so, at least in the near future. Krupp said, lest you become distracted, of course. It is clear, is it not, that even Krupp's mere presence generates wisdom and bounty? Silver Fox said, very clear. Very well. We'll have to find you a horse, since I plan to ride. Krupp exclaimed, a horse? Horrors! Foul beasts! Nay, I hold to my trusty mule. Silver Fox said, tightly. Krupp said, to the limits of my physical abilities, aye. He turned at a clopping sound behind them and said, ah, speak of the demon. And look, a moonstruck horse follows like a pup on a leash. And is it any wonder when one looks upon my handsome, proud beast?
Have I ever mentioned the fact that reading in the ancient times, like in biblical days and that stuff, that do you know that the kings rode on mules and not on horses?
No. That's news.
They did. The mule was seen very as the transportation of the king.
And why is that?
I'm not exactly sure what the meaning of it is, but I just know that they rode it. That was the animal of the kings rode in. And in particular, the Jews were commanded not really having horses anyhow, so they not to multiply wives or horses. So they didn't use a lot of animals for warfare. They just fought it kind of hand to hand and didn't use a lot of chariots. So I guess if they did any, I have no idea what the correlation would be and why the king would have ridden on one, but that's what I've been informed.
I wonder why the Jews can't have horses.
The multiplying of the wives and the horses was just one of these things they shouldn't. They led to polygamy and this expansion. It led to a more expansionistic. They were commanded to take over a certain area, and I think if you would have multiplied more, you would have wanted to take over more than you wanted. I guess I don't know. That's going to be my thought.
Interesting. Were they allowed camels?
Camels aren't really mentioned in the Bible that much, except for, I don't remember the camels being mentioned at all in the Bible. Not many animals are mentioned. Horses.
Huh. They always show the three kings with camels, don't they?
They do, but I'm assuming that's just an assumption made by the people that would have been the... I take that back. There's mention of camels because I remember the Queen of Sheba comes to talk to Solomon, and she brought a retinue on camels and carried him. She traveled probably almost a year to get to him and traveled with just no one had ever seen that much gold and stuff she brought to him as a present. And she brought it on camels. So. Oh,
okay. I was looking for some biblical reference that camels were better than horses. I guess I didn't get it today.
Oh, no, sorry. No, it's the horses is a fantastic animal, as you and I know. But I think in this context in particular, the only thing a horse was used for basically in that day would have been for warfare and warfare only.
Maybe they're not really designed to live in the desert. Maybe it's too much upkeep, not enough water, not enough feed.
Yeah, and the camels and mules are mules are a smart one. As far as that they'll work until they won't kind of deal. It's because they know their limits and they'll stop at their limit. And this is why people don't like mules, is because they know their limit and they'll stop. Whereas a horse, you can run a horse to death.
Yeah.
I just always think it's funny that Krupp and this mule, it kind of just brought that back to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he riding the king's animal?
He knows the secret.
He does.
Silver Fox studied the saddled horse trailing the mule with narrowed eyes. She said, tell me, Krupp, who else will be witness to the gathering through you? Krupp said, through Krupp? Why not but Krupp himself? He swears. She said, not the mule, surely. Krupp said, lass, the mule's capacity for sleep in no matter what the circumstances is boundless, unaffected, and indeed admirable. I assure you, none shall witness through its eyes. Silver Fox said, sleep, is it? No doubt, to dream. Very well, let us be on with it, Krupp. I trust you're comfortable with the ride through the night? Krupp said, not in the least, but perseverance is Krupp's closest cousin.
Real quick, what it said is that what I was able to discern is in the ancient Middle Eastern world, leaders rode horses if they rode to war, but donkeys if they came in peace.
Okay.
So there we go. That's what I'm thinking of, coming in peace.
Okay. Elsewhere in the camp, Whiskey Jack heard someone say, walk with me. Pausing as he emerged from the tent entrance, Whiskey Jack looked left to see Rake standing in the gloom. He thought, not Corlat then. Oh well. Whiskey Jack said, of course, Lord. Rake led him through the tent rows, southward, out to the very edge of the encampment, then beyond. They ascended a ridge and came within sight of Catlin River. Starlight played on its swirling surface 200 paces away. Neither man spoke for a long while. Finally, Rake sighed, then asked, how fares the leg? Whiskey Jack said, it aches, especially after a full day in the saddle. Rake said, Brood is an accomplished healer. High Denul. He would not hesitate should you ask. Whiskey Jack said, when there's time. Rake said, there has been plenty of that, as we both know. Nonetheless, I share something of your stubbornness, so I'll not raise the subject again. Have you been contacted by Quick Ben? Real quick before Whiskey Jack's response, Why do men always avoid going to the doctor? We practically have to be falling apart to go.
I don't know if it's a thing that if we see it as a sign of weakness, or if it's like if we're going to think that, wow, they're going to tell us the worst case scenario and I'm going to be dead, or I don't know.
Part of it's like, it'll be all right.
Yeah, it's walking
It'll take
off
care of itself.
I think it's. I think that's the main. That's probably the main thing that men do, because like, you know what? If it's still bothering me tomorrow, I'll think about it. You know, if it's bothering me tomorrow, we just keep kicking the can. You just keep kicking the can.
Whiskey Jack nodded and said, he's in Kapustan, or should be by now. Rake said, I am relieved. The assault on the Warrens has made being a mage somewhat perilous. Even Corald Ghislaine has felt the poison's touch. Whiskey Jack said, I know. Rake slowly turned to regard him. He said, I had not expected to find her in such renewal, a heart I'd believed closed forever, to see it flowering so. Whiskey Jack shifted uneasily and said, I may have wounded it this evening. Rake said, momentarily, perhaps. Your false outlawry is known. Whiskey Jack said, thus the meeting, or so we thought. Rake said, I pulled the thorn before you and the High Fist arrived. Whiskey Jack steadied Rake in the gloom. He said, I wasn't sure. The suspicion could find no root, however. Rake said, because to you my position makes no sense. Whiskey Jack said, aye. Rake shrugged and said, I rarely see necessity as a burden. Whiskey Jack thought about that, then nodded. He said, you still need us. Rake said, more than ever, perhaps. And not just your army. We need Quick Ben. We need Humbrol Tar and his Whiteface clans. We need your link to Silver Fox, and through her to the Talan Mass. We need Captain Perrin. Whiskey Jack said, Gano is Perrin? Why? Rake said, he is the master of the Deck of Dragons. Whiskey Jack said, it's no secret then. Rake said, it never was. Whiskey Jack asked, do you know what that role signifies? A genuine question, because, frankly, I don't, and I wish I damn well did. Rake said, the crippled god has fashioned a new house and now seeks to join it to the Deck of Dragons. A sanction is required. A blessing, if you will. Or, conversely, a denial. Whiskey Jack grunted and said, what about the House of Shadow, then? Was there a master of the deck around who sanctioned its joining? Rake said, there was no need. The House of Shadow has always existed, more or less. Shadowthrone and Cotillion simply reawakened it. And that kind of makes you wonder how many other realms are sitting there waiting to be awakened, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Were you in the position to make a move to take one over, how would you even choose? Is there some type of Warren tier list out there?
Yeah, I'm guessing that there would have to be. Because who wants to be in charge of the Warren of Cotton? We all want the fire Warren. We want the fire. Cotton Warren might be a nice place to sleep, but but I don't know what's better. Is it the boat repair Warren? Is that marginally better than the Cotton Warren? It would have to be better, because at least you can repair boats. I don't know if you need to stuff mattresses or pillows with that Cotton Warren, but part of that aggression, folks, just my professionalism on the script.
You'll sleep a lot more comfortably in that Cotton Warren.
Yes, unless there's cotton predators there of some type.
Oh.
Predation on the cotton animals that live there or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Whiskey Jack said, and now you want Perrin, the master of the deck, to deny the crippled god's house. Rake said, I believe he must. To grant the fallen one legitimacy is to grant him power. We see what he is capable of in his present weakened state. The House of Chains is the foundation he will use to rebuild himself. Whiskey Jack said, yet you and the gods took him down once before. The chaining. Rake said, a costly endeavor, Whiskey Jack. One in which the god Fainor was vital. Tell me, among your soldiers, the tusked one is a popular god. Have you priests as well? Whiskey Jack said, no. Fainor's popular enough, being the lord of battle. Malazans are somewhat relaxed when it comes to the pantheon. We tend to discourage organized cults within the military. Rake said, Fainor is lost to us. Whiskey Jack said, lost? What do you mean? Rake said, torn from his realm, now striding the mortal earth. Whiskey Jack asked, how? There was a grim smile in Rake's tone as he explained, by a Malazan, a once priest of Fainor, a victim of the Reeve. Whiskey Jack asked, which means? Rake said, his hands were ritually severed. The power of the Reeve then sends those hands to the hooves of Fainor himself. The ritual must be the expression of purest justice, but this one wasn't. Rather, there was a perceived need to reduce the influence of Fainor, and in particular that high priest, by agents of the Empire, likely the Claw. You mentioned the discouraging of cults within the army. Perhaps that was a factor. My knowledge is not complete, alas. Certainly the high priest's penchant for historical analysis was another. He had completed an investigation that concluded that the Empress Lysine in fact failed in her assassination of the Emperor and Dancer. Granted, she got the throne she so badly wanted, but neither Kellanved nor Dancer actually died. Instead, they ascended. I was surprised by how well-informed Rake is with the goings-on within the Malazan Empire.
Yeah.
Of course, they are speaking of Hebrick in this conversation. We've received a variation of this information in the past, but this is fleshing the scenario out a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that he knows like the ins and outs of like this reeve or that they're talking about and whatever that is. He is incredibly well informed. Guess you don't get to live that old without being well informed.
Makes you wonder how he learned all this.
Right?
It's not like you can have a Tistandi spy floating around the Malazan Empire.
In some of the other fantasy worlds we've visited, I think in particular Lord of the Rings is my primary, where they have the Palantirs. You've got some crystal balls or scrying pools or something. We don't see that type of action being used in this universe a lot. At least not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he would be so well informed.
This is like ground level intel.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of it is just intelligence because he's just smart enough to suss a bunch of stuff out being that old. But it's not just all intelligence. That's actual information.
Yeah.
That he has privy to. I'm like you, how did you find that? Now, we do know that, I don't know who would be reporting to him, but do you think some of the, like maybe one of the, who is it? Is it Topper that's the half Tist?
Yeah, but he's high up in the claw, man. I don't think he'd be. That would really surprise me.
I don't think he would be, but that maybe what I'm getting at is that there might be more Tist around than we realize that are half Tist or quarter Tist or something like that might be acceptable in certain areas, and he could be working for Rake or something, just keeping his ear to the ground. I got no idea.
Whiskey Jack said, I could see why Surly's back would crawl at that revelation. Rake asked, Surly? Whiskey Jack said, the Empress Lysine. Surly was her old name. Rake said, in any case, those severed hands were as poison to Fainor. He could not touch them, nor could he remove them from his realm. He burned the tattoos announcing his denial upon the high priest's skin, and so sealed the virulent power of the hands, at least for the time being. And that should have been that. Eventually the priest would die, and his spirit would come to Fainor to retrieve what had been cruelly and wrongfully taken from him. That spirit would then become the weapon of Fanor's wrath, his vengeance upon the priests of the fouled temple, and indeed upon the Claw and the Empress herself. A dark storm awaited the Malazan Empire, Whiskey Jack. So based on this last paragraph, the ritual of the Reeve must be performed for the correct reasons. Invoking these rituals with malintent would eventually come to bite those that had used them in the behind at some point. As it stands, I wonder if the perpetrators were ever served the justice they deserved.
If not, I'm assuming it's going to be coming for them, because it sounds like there's not a way to, you maybe can subvert it for a little bit, but it sounds like justice will be coming for them.
Well, that's the problem. I don't know if it is.
It may not.
Because it sounded like when Heberick died, he would be the one that would come for them. He'd get his hands back.
Yes. He'd get his hands back and be an agent for Fainor, is what that sounds like to me. But that does not happen. It has not happened yet, at least.
Dude, he's like the agent of Fainor's vengeance. I wonder if that's a special title.
Oh, yeah. That could very well be.
It's like, you got a Destriant, Mortal Sword. You got... Try not to laugh. You got the Shield Anvil, and you got the Mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the Mechanic. I agree. Or / cleaner. The cleaner of Fainor. It's like, that doesn't ring so good as the Mechanic, though. Mechanic's way better.
You got the Wolf.
Yeah, the Wolf. The Wolf of Fainor. That's all you had to say. Sorry, I just watched that not that long ago.
Oh, I need to watch it again. Whiskey Jack said, but something's happened. Rake said, aye, the High Priest has, by design or chance, come into contact with the Warren of Chaos. An object, perhaps, forged within that warren. The protective seal around his severed hands was obliterated by that vast, uncontrolled surge of power. And, finding Fainor, those hands pushed. And there you go. Wow. You asked whether it was Heberick's hands that pushed Fainor into our realm. That's the confirmation right there that it was.
Yeah. And talk about a long series of events that led to that. I mean, if any of these hadn't gone right, that wouldn't have happened. If Heberick hadn't come in contact with the auditorial hand, this wouldn't have happened.
No, it's completely random.
Yeah, it's a series of random events. It's a holy smokes. Wow, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty nasty chain of causality there.
It is. Whiskey Jack muttered, Hood's breath, his eyes on the glittering river. Rake went on, and now the Tiger of Summer ascends to take his place. But Treach is young, much weaker, his warren but a paltry thing, his followers far fewer in number than Fainor's. All is in flux. No doubt the crippled god is smiling. Whiskey Jack said, wait a moment. Treach has ascended? That's one huge coincidence. Rake said, some fates were foreseen, or so it seems. Whiskey Jack asked, by whom? Rake said, the elder gods. Whiskey Jack asked, and why are they so interested in all this? Rake said, they were there when the crippled god fell, was dragged down to this earth. The fall destroyed many of them, leaving but a few survivors. Whatever secrets surround the fallen one, where he came from, the nature of his aspect, the ritual itself that captured him, Karul and his kin possessed them. That they have chosen to become directly involved, now that the crippled god has resumed his war, has dire implications as to the seriousness of the threat. Whiskey Jack said, "Quite an understatement, Lord." He remained quiet for a time, then he sighed and said, leading us back to Ganoa's parent and the House of Chains. "All right, I understand why you want him to deny the crippled god's gambit. I should warn you, however, Perrin doesn't take orders well." Dude, this is coming from his commander.
I know it. I love that. I told you I had a little of that Perrin in me, but that is too funny, man.
Rake said, "We must hope, then, that he sees which course is wisest. Will you advise him on our behalf?" Whiskey Jack said, "I'll try." Changing tones, Rake said, "Tell me, Whiskey Jack, do you ever find the voice of a river unsettling?" Whiskey Jack frowned. He said, "To the contrary, I find it calming." Rake said, "Ah, this then points to the essential difference between us." Whiskey Jack thought, "Between mortals and immortals? Beru fend, Animander Rake. I know precisely what you need." Whiskey Jack said, "I have a small casket of Gredfallen ale, Lord. I would like to retrieve it now, if you don't mind waiting." Rake said, "A sound plan, Whiskey Jack." Whiskey Jack thought, "And by dawn may you find the voice grown calm." He turned and made his way back to the encampment. As he approached the first row of tents, he paused and turned back to look at the distant figure, standing tall and motionless on the grassy ridge. The sword Dragnapur, strapped crossways on Rake's back, hung like an elongated cross, surrounded in its own breath of preternatural darkness. Whiskey Jack thought, "Alas, I don't think Gredfallen ale will be enough." Do you have any insight into why the river bothers Rake?
I am not sure. I found that intriguing. Maybe this due to the fact that they're so old and filled with this ennui. Maybe they want, when they're left alone, maybe they prefer complete and utter solitude with no noise. Maybe they don't like things moving or water running or things like that. I don't know.
I was trying to think of how time is different for them. Mm-hmm. And to us, the sound of the river is very pleasing. We don't really put much thought into what the river is doing to the land.
Right.
Maybe, and this is pure conjecture, I have nothing to back this up, but I was thinking like maybe to them, they're thinking in centuries, thousands of years, the river is eroding and changing things.
Maybe. Let's take just a moment here for a second to... The thing that I forgot to bring up is how cool is it that Rake grabs Whiskey Jack and is kind of telling him, "Hey, it's good to see Corlett feeling like this." It's like he knows what's going on with these two. It's like, dude, that's really cool that he cares for his own people so much. He's glad to see Corlett happy. And that Whiskey Jack is responsible for him. I think that's kind of cool about that he cares about his folks that much.
It's cool. There should have been another sentence be like, "If you break her heart."
Oh, yeah.
Points to Dragnapur.
Right? He ain't got to. Corlat's bad enough as herself. You know?
No, because I was thinking of like a dad or older brother type scenario. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. You know, where you'll be spending the night in the box.
Uncle Animander is going to come over and he's going to deal with you.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, Talamandus asked, "And which warren will you choose for this?" Quickben studied the sprawled bodies and the tumbled, blood-stained stones of the city wall. Spot fires were visible through the gap, smoke blotting the night sky above dark, seemingly lifeless buildings. He said, "Rashan, I think." Talamandus said, "Shadow, I should have guessed." He scrambled atop a heap of corpses, then turned to look at Quickben, then asked, "Shall we proceed?" Quickben opened the warren, tightly leashed, and held it close about him. The sorcery swallowed him in shadows. Talamandus snickered, then approached. He said, "I shall ride your shoulder for this, yes?" Quickben grumbled, "If you insist." Talamandus said, "You leave me little choice. To control a warren by tumbling it before you and sweeping it up behind you may well reveal your mastery, but I am left with little room to maneuver within it. Though why we need bother with warrens at all right now is beyond me." Quickben said, "I need the practice. Besides, I hate being noticed. Climb aboard, then." Talamandus clambered up the wizard's leg, set its feet of bound twine on his belt, then dragged itself up Quickben's tunic. The weight as Talamandus settled on his left shoulder was insubstantial. Twig fingers closed on his collar. He said, "I can handle a tumble or two, but don't make a habit of it." This whole scene of this little doll climbing him is like when you have young kids climbing you. It's funny. Quickben moved forward, slipping through the gap in the wall. The firelight threw stark slashes through the shadows, randomly painting glimpses of the wizard's body. Deep shadow cutting through any firelit scene would have been noticeable. He concentrated on blending into what surrounded him. Flame, smoke, and ashes. Vague moans from collapsing buildings. A few streets away, the morning chant of Barghast. Talamandus whispered, "The Panions are all gone. Why the need to hide?" Quick Ben said, "It's my nature. Caution keeps me alive. Now be quiet." I want you to remember this sentence. Caution keeps me alive. We're going to come back to that thought.
Yeah.
We have two thoughts, that one from last week and then this sentence that we're going to bring up later in this chapter.
Okay.
He entered the street lined by Daru estates. While other avenues evinced the efforts of the white-faced tribes to clear away bodies, no such task had taken place here. Panion soldiery lay dead in appalling numbers, heaped around one estate in particular. Its blackened gatehouse a maw ringed in dried blood. A low wall ran to either side of the gate. Dark, motionless figures stood guard along it, apparently perched on some kind of walkway, halfway up the other side. Crouched at the foot of another building, 60 paces away, Quickman studied the scene. The bitter breath of sorcery still clung to the air. On his shoulder, Talamandus hissed in sudden recognition. Talamandus whispered, "The necromancers! The ones who tore me from my barrow!" Quickben murmured, "I thought you had nothing to fear from them anymore." Talamandus whispered, "I don't, but that does nothing to diminish my hatred or disgust." Quickben said, "That's unfortunate, because I want to talk to them." Talamandus asked, "Why?" Quickben said, "To take their measure, why else?" Talamandus said, "Idiocy, wizard. Whatever they are is nothing good." Quickben said, "And I am? Now let me think." Talamandus said, "You'll never get past those undead guards." Quickben said, "When I say let me think, I mean shut up." Grumbling, shifting about on Quickben's shoulder, Talamandus reluctantly subsided. Dude, I love this guy. He's such a character.
Yes. And I love that he's got such a great personality, but it's a bundle of twigs.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting it's a bundle of twigs.
Yeah, and he's not creeping me out like Hairlock was.
Right? Dude, Hairlock's insane, man. Talamandus has given us no indication that he's insane.
Right. Finally, Quickben said, "We'll need a different warrant for this. The choice is this, Hood's Own or Errol Gamelon." Talamandus said, "Errol what? I've never heard..." Quickben cut in, "Demonic. Most conjurers who summon demons are opening a path to Gamelon, though they probably don't know it. Not by its true name, anyway. Granted, one can find demons in other warrens, the Aptorians of Shadow, for example. But the Corvalarai and the Ghislaine, the Empire's favored, are both of Gamelon." So that's a new warren. It's been a while since we've had a net new warren introduced.
Yes. I think that we've heard that name before, but I don't recall it having spelled out exactly this about Errol Gamelon. I like the info drop on that.
Oh, you actually remember it being mentioned before?
Yes, it's been mentioned. It's mentioned, I think, in Gardens or Deadhouse. I think it's Gardens.
Huh. I don't recall that.
You know, in Gardens, they do some of that stuff where they just list things and just kind of throw away stuff at the beginning or here and there, just when you're reading it. You don't realize what it is until you've read it before. It's kind of one of those scenarios when in Gardens, I think that it's just kind of something thrown out there real haphazardly. Like, well, I saw something. I saw something I recognized.
Okay, well, maybe it's not a new one then. I was wrong. Quickben went on. "Anyway, if my instincts are accurate, there's both kinds of necromancy present in that estate. You did say there were two of them, didn't you?" Talamandus said, "Aye, and two kinds of madness." Quickben said, "Sounds interesting." Talamandus said, "This is a whim. Have you learned nothing from your multiple souls, wizard? Whims are deadly. Do something for no reason but curiosity, and it closes like a wolf's jaws on your throat. And even if you manage to escape, it haunts you, forever." Quickben said, "You talk too much, Stick Snare. I've made my decision. Time to move." He folded the warren of Roshan about himself, then stepped forward. Talamandus hissed, "Ashes in the urn." Quickben said, "Aye, Hood's Own. Comforted by the familiarity? Is the safer choice, since Hood himself has blessed you, right?" Talamandus said, "I am not comforted." That wasn't too surprising, as Quickben studied the transformation around him. Death ran riot in this city. Souls crowded the streets, trapped in cycles of their own last moments of life. The air was filled with shrieks, wailing, the chop of weapons, the crushing collapse of stone and the suffocating smoke. Layered beneath this were countless other deaths, those that were set down, like successive snowfalls, on any place where humans gathered, generation upon generation. Yet, Quickben slowly realized, this conflagration was naught but echoes, the souls themselves ghostly. Suddenly understanding, he murmured, "Gods below, this is but memory, what the stones of the streets and buildings hold, memories of the air itself. The souls, they've all gone through Hood's gate." Talamandus was motionless on his shoulder. He muttered, "You speak true, wizard. What has happened here? Who has taken all these dead?" Quickben said, "Taken, aye, under wing. They've been blessed, one and all. Their pain ended. Is this the work of the masked council?" Talamandus spat, then said, "Those fools? Not likely." Quickben said nothing for a time. Then he sighed and said, "Capustan might recover after all. I didn't think that was possible. Well, shall we walk with these ghosts? Talamandis asked, do we have to? Not replying, Quick Ben strode forward. The undead guards, Seerdaman and Erdaman, were dark smears, stains on Hood's own warren, but they were blind to his presence in the realm where Quick Ben now walked. Of the 2 necromancers residing within, one was now negated. The only risk remaining was if the other one, the summoner, had released any demons to supplement the estate's defenses. Quick Ben strode through the gateway. The compound before him was clear of any bodies, though caked blood coated the flagstones here and there. Twigfinger spasmed tight on his shoulder. Talamandis said, I smell... He was interrupted as the Cyrinth demon that had been squatting in front of the main house doors, draped in the lintel stone's shadow, appeared. It now grunted and heaved its bulk clear of the landing, coming into full view. Swathed in folds of toad-like skin, splay-limbed, with a wide, low head that was mostly jaws and fangs, the Cyrinth masked more than a veteran bull. In short bursts, however, it could be lightning fast. And a short burst was all it needed to reach Quick Ben and Talamandis. Talamandis shrieked. Quick Ben lithely stepped aside, even as he unfolded yet another warren, this one layered over Hood's own. A backward stride took him into that warren, where heat flowed like liquid and dry amber light suffused the air. The Cyrinth wheeled, then dropped flat on its belly within Arol Gamelon. Quick Ben edged further into the demonic warren. This guy is insane, going into the demonic warren.
Yeah, I agree. Totally insane.
I wonder what it's like in there. The heat flowed like liquid statement really concerns me.
Yeah. Well, what's funny, I said I can't say it now. I don't want to give something away. We'll talk about this in the other books. We'll talk about some warrens of demons.
Okay. Whining, the Cyrinth sought to follow, only to be brought short by a now visible iron collar and chain. The chain leading back out all the way, Quick Ben knew, to whatever binding circle the summoner had conjured when chaining this creature. As the demon squealed, Quick Ben said, Too bad, friend. Might I suggest a deal, Cyrinth? I break the chain and you go find your loved ones. Peace between us. The creature went perfectly motionless. Folded lids slid back to reveal large, luminous eyes. In the mortal realm they'd just left, those eyes burned like fire. Here within Arol Gamelon, they were almost docile. Quick Ben thought almost. Don't fool yourself, Quick. This thing could gobble you up in one bite. He said, Well? The Cyrinth slithered sideways, stretched its neck. Sorcery glowed from the collar and chain. The iron crowded with carved glyphs. Quick Ben said, I'll need to take a closer look. Know that Hood's warren remains with us. Talamandis hissed, Not well enough. Those undead guards have seen us. Quick Ben said, We've a few moments yet, if you shut up, that is. Cyrinth, if you attack me when I come close, I'll reveal for you another chain about your neck. Hood's. Dead but not dead. Trapped in the in-between. Forever. Understand me? The creature squealed again, but made no other move. Quick Ben said, Good enough. Talamandis said, You fool. Ignoring the stick snare, Quick Ben stepped to the side of the huge demon. He knew that head could snap round, fast enough to be nothing more than a blur, the jaws opening to swallow head, shoulders, Talamandis included, and torso down to hips. He studied the glyphs, then grunted and said, Accomplished indeed. The key, however, to breaking this chaining lies in unraveling but a single thread. The challenge is finding the right one. Talamandis said, Will you hurry? Those undead are converging. On us! Quick Ben leaned closer and said, A moment, please, while squinting at the sigils. He murmured, Curious, this is Corelry script, High Corelry, which hasn't been used in centuries. Well, easy enough then. He reached out, muttering a few words, and scored one glyph with the nail of his thumb. He said, Thus, changing its meaning. Gripping the chain on either side of the marred sigil, Quick Ben gave a quick yank. The chain snapped. The Cyrinth lunged forward, then spun, jaws wide. Talamandis screamed. Quick Ben was already in the air, through the warren's gate, back into Hood's own, where he dipped a shoulder as he struck the flagstones, rolling over then back onto his feet, with Talamandis still clinging to his tunic. The wizard then froze. They were surrounded by dark, insubstantial figures, now motionless as their quarry was no longer visible. Wisely, Talamandis said nothing. Still crouching, Quick Ben slowly, silently edged between 2 undead guards, then padded clear, approaching the double doors. Talamandis moaned in a whisper, Gods, why are we doing this? Quick Ben said, Because it's fun? The doors were unlocked. So, couple things. High Corelry. Coral is an island that is southeast of Malaz Island. It's a continent that we really don't get to see much of in the main series. There's a book, Stonewielder, that deals with some stuff going on there. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But that gives us some indication as to where Boshalane may be from. So I thought that was interesting.
It is. I'm just fascinated with these two guys.
Yeah. When you say these two guys, Quick Ben and Talamandis, or Bosch Lane and Cornball Brooch.
Bosch Lane and Cornball Brooch. I'm always fascinated with Quick Ben, but these characters, well, they could have been they're obviously very powerful. Companions were trying to take them out and couldn't take them out. This is just two guys.
Yeah.
So that's pretty formidable.
Yeah, the fact that they were fighting off Ka'Chain Shamal with sorcery and survived was very impressive.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember what Whiskey Jack told Quick Ben before he went into Kapistan?
Was it being careful? Don't get killed, do crazy things?
Yeah, something about exercising caution, yes. Being careful.
Yes. Is this Quick Ben exercising caution, though, as best as he knows how?
I just think it's funny. I get the need to practice, but he was almost eaten by a demon seconds ago.
Yeah, it don't stop him. Curiosity may kill this cat sometime in the future.
Yeah. Earlier in this section, he said that he was cautious. And maybe to your point, cautious is relative.
Yeah.
His tolerance for risk is much higher than mine, say.
Yes. I'm assuming, like I said, we've talked about these guys. I think these guys are they're obviously a bunch of adrenaline junkies at this point in their life.
Like a bomb defusal squad?
Yes. Not going to be happy they'll have another bomb
to defuse. What was that movie? The Hurt Locker?
Hurt Locker, yep.
Quick Ben slipped inside and shut the door behind them. The soft click of the latch seemed overloud in the alcove. Talamandus breathed, "So, which Warren now?" Quick Ben said, "Do I sense you're getting into the spirit of the thing?" Talamandus said, "Bad word to choose, mortal." Smiling, Quick Ben closed Hood's own. He thought, "It should be clear why I'm doing this, stick snare. I've been without Warrens for too long. I need the practice. More, I need to know just how efficacious you are. And so far, so good. The poison is held at bay, unable to close on me. I'm pleased." He strode to the nearest wall, set both hands against the cool stone. Talamandus chuckled and said, "Driss, the path of stone. Clever bastard." Quick Ben pushed the warren open, slid into the wall. There was nothing easy in this. Stone could be traversed easily enough, its resistance no more than water, but mortar was less yielding, tugging at his passage like the strands of a particularly stubborn spider's web. Worse, the walls were thin, forcing him to edge along sideways. He followed the wall's course from room to room, working his way ever inward. Daru-style architecture was predictable and symmetrical. The main chamber of the ground floor would be central. Upper levels were more problematic, but more often than not the ground floor's main chamber was vaulted, pushing the upper rooms to the building's sides. Rooms were visible to him, but just barely. Grainy, gray, the furniture smudged and indistinct, but living flesh positively glowed. Stone knows blood, but cannot hold it. Stone yearns for life, yet can only mimic it. The words were ancient ones, a mason and sculptor who'd lived centuries ago in Unta, appropriate enough when on the path of Driss, when in the flesh of the sleeping goddess. Slipping round a corner, Quick Ben caught his first sight of the main chamber. A figure reclined on some kind of divan near the fireplace. He seemed to be reading a book. Another man stoked the fire's faintly pink, dull flames, muttering under his breath. Pacing back and forth on the mantel was a small creature, a crow or raven, perhaps. The man on the divan was speaking even as he flapped parchment pages in his book, his words made muted and brittle sounding by the stone. "When you're done there, Emancipor, return the guards to their positions on the wall. Having them standing in the courtyard all facing inward on nothing is suggestive of the ridiculous. Hardly a scene to inspire fear in potential intruders." Reese rose from the hearth and said, "If you don't mind my saying so, master, if we've unwelcome company, shouldn't we be doing something about it?" Bosch Lane said, "Much as I dislike losing my demons, dear servant, I do not assume that all visitors are malign. Dismissing my Syrinth was no doubt the only option available, and even then it must have been a risk-laden endeavor. The chain is but half of the gaius, of course. The commands within the collar cannot so easily be defeated. Thus, some patience, now, until our guest decides to make formal his or her visit." Talamandus' acorn head touched Quick Ben's ear. He whispered, "Leave me here when you step through, wizard. Treachery from this man is not just a likelihood, it's a damned certainty." Quick Ben shrugged. The stick snare's weight left his shoulder. Smiling, Quick Ben stepped from the warren, began brushing gritty dust from his tunic and rain cape. The seated man slowly closed his book without looking up, then said, "Some wine, Emancipor, for me and my guest." The servant spun to face Quick Ben and exclaimed, "Hood's breath! Where did he come from?" This poor guy. It's amazing he hasn't had a heart attack yet.
Oh, I know it. This guy. Poor Mancy. Who knows what this old boy's seen?
Seriously. Bosch Lane said, "The walls have ears, eyes, and all the rest. Be on with your task, Emancipor." Then he finally lifted his head and met Quick Ben's gaze. Quick Ben thought, "Now that's a lizard's regard. Well, I've never quailed from the like before, so why should I now?" Matching the Daru language Bosch Lane used, Quick Ben said, "Wine would be wonderful." Bosch Lane said something flowery as Reese strode towards the side door. The crow on the mantel had ceased its pacing and now studied Quick Ben with cocked head. After a moment, it resumed its back and forth ambling. Is this Korbal Brooch in Soul Taken form?
I believe that it is.
Why would he be in that form?
I don't know. Maybe he just likes it.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I'm curious why you'd stay in it. Yeah, maybe it's liberating.
Boshlain said, "Please be seated. My name is Boshlain." Quick Ben said, "Quick Ben," then walked to the plush chair opposite Boshlain and settled into it. He sighed. Boshlain said, "An interesting name. Aptly chosen, if I may so presume. To have dodged the Serenth's attack, I assume it attacked once you'd released it?" Quick Ben said, "Clever, locking a holdover spell in that collar. One last command to kill whomever frees it. I assume that doesn't include you, its summoner." Boshlain said, "I never free my demons." Quick Ben asked, "Never?" Boshlain said, "Every exception to a magical geas weakens it. I allow none." Quick Ben exclaimed, "Poor demons!" Boshlain shrugged and said, "I hold no sympathy for mere tools. Do you weep for your dagger when it breaks in someone's back?" Quick Ben said, "That depends on whether it killed the bastard or just made him mad." Boshlain said, "Ah, but then you weep for yourself." Quick Ben said, "I was making a joke." Boshlain raised a single thin eyebrow. The subsequent silence was broken by Emansipor's return, bearing a tray on which sat a dusty bottle and 2 crystal goblets. Boshlain asked, "Not a glass for yourself? Am I so unegalitarian, Emancipor?" Reese said, I took a swig below, master." Boshlain said, "You did?" Reese said, "To see if it was flowery." Boshlain asked, "And was it?" Reese said, "Not sure. Maybe. What's flowery?" Boshlain said, We must resume your education, I think, of such finer things. Flowery is the opposite of woody, not bitter memory of sap, in other words, but something sweet, as of narcissus or skullcrown." Faintly alarmed, Quick Ben said, "Those flowers are poisonous." Boshlain said, "But pretty and sweet in appearance, yes? I doubt any of us are in the habit of eating flowers. Thus an analogy. I sought visual cues for dear Emancipor." Quick Ben said, "Ah, I see." Boshlain said, "Before you pour from that bottle then, Emancipor, was the aftertaste bitter or sweet?" Reese said, It was kind of thick, master, like iron." Boshlain rose and grasped the bottle. He held it close, then sniffed the mouth. He said, "You idiot! This is blood from Korbal Brooch's collection. Not that row, the one opposite. Take this back to the cellar." Dude. Emancipor's lined face had gone parchment white. He said, "Blood? Whose?" Boshlain asked, "Does it matter?" As Emancipor gaped, Quick Ben cleared his throat and said, "To your servant, I think the answer would be, yes, it does." The crow cackled from the mantelpiece, head bobbing. That's definitely Korbal Brooch.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
He seems to be laughing here.
Yeah, I think so.
Reese sagged on watery knees, the goblets on the tray clinking together. Frowning, Boshlain collected the bottle again and sniffed once more. He said, "Well, I'm not the one to ask, of course, but I think it's virgin's blood." Quick Ben had no choice but to inquire, "How can you tell?" Boshlain regarded him with raised brows and said, "Why, it's woody." And on that note, we are going to stop and pick up the chapter next week. For standout moments, the way the Malazans want to handle the Tenniscowry. I thought that really showed some ethical standards on their part, and I appreciated that.
I do too. I also appreciate the way that Rake wants to handle him, which is just turn into a giant dragon and scare the crap out of him.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
That's a good way to do it.
Pretty effective.
And the ideological differences that this situation exposed within the Alliance were interesting as well.
Yes, it was. It's so funny to think that this Alliance was so ready to break on that one thing, on the outlawry, whether legitimate or not, from the Empress. To them, I thought very intrigued. I did not receive much of a threat into that as they did, for some reason.
I think the larger issue was possibly how they were going to handle these Tenniscowry.
Okay.
They're both big issues.
Yeah, they are.
But in this case, I think I was more focused on that rent that was appearing on how to handle the Tenniscowry.
Yeah.
Or any of the Panions, really.
Yeah, that's a big deal because we're going to have a lot of victims here of something. We don't want it to go bad.
On that note, I did appreciate Rake's perception of the situation and how he convinced the other members of the Alliance to not fault the Malazans for their handling of the fake outlawry.
Yes, I really like that, especially because he's like, look, man, they're soldiers. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're good soldiers. And I mean, while he's talking about them, he's singing their praises too, which I thought's pretty cool.
Yeah.
His admiration for them.
And I appreciated learning more details about Hebrick's backstory from Rake.
Very much love that. I like being confirmed that it's true, but I think it says an awful lot for Mr. Erikson's writing that it led me to that point. And then he's like, yeah, you're right. Here's the answer. You were right, sir. I like that.
Quick Ben and Talamandus. I love their interactions, the way they talk to each other, the way they work together. It's a great pairing.
Yeah, very good pairing. Very good comedic duo, this two.
Mm-hmm. And Quick Ben's use of all the warrens at his disposal to enter Boshlane and Corval Broach's estate. It's a truly creative use of magic, and it's really cool how he broke the chaining spell on that demon, for example. Not your standard, I cast a spell, It's very, very creative.
Well, it's thought out, it's creative, and he's also got a backdoor escape plan for when something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always got plans within the plans, and just absolutely amazing. And I truly... I say, and I'll come up with this here in a minute at the very end, but I'm looking forward to next week.
Oh, yeah.
When we get more with this interaction with these two, because this is a core memory.
Quick Ben's like one of those people that permanently only PvPs in games, so he always is like 2 steps ahead of you.
Yes.
He knows what you're going to do, knows what you're thinking.
Yeah. Yes.
He's like a master dueler.
Yeah. He knows because he's been there, done there, and lost to it at one way or another, and he knows how to overcome it now.
Yeah. And then finally, Reese accidentally drinking virgin's blood, thinking it was wine.
That's pretty disgusting. I don't know what's more disgusting, that, or is it, or Boshlane with this little remark about how can you tell it's virgin blood remark,
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Yeah, great episode, man.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I just really love that Quick Ben has finally made it to the Necromancer's lair. And I even said it last week's episode, how for some reason, this meeting between the Necromancers and Quick Ben, it's one of the strongest memories in the whole series. And it's funny because I don't even know if anything major ever comes out of it other than just information that I like. It just always stands out how he got there by weaving all the different warrens, and not just weaving them, but the way he would wear it. He puts it on and he's in Hood's realm, but it's in Hood's realm on our world. Like he's using it like night vision.
Yeah, layering them on top of each other.
Yeah, that's wild, dude. And I love...
Yeah, nobody else does it like him.
Yes, and I love this. And like you, I love the Quick Ben and Talamanda's team. It's just great. It's just so fun to walk or to see, and it's just so enjoyable. I just love this part of this book.
It's really good.
Great episode, though.
All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Hey, we'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we'd really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.